and not necessarily aim for perfection. What's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel today, where I'll be discussing the topic of musicality and sampling and how they intertwine and the relationships there. Just the top three things I think you need to be aware of to make sure that those both kick off nicely. It's a result of a conversation I've had with one of my good friends, Richard Imbrogno, who's also a professional musician and knows his way around some keys. And we were just having this conversation about how do we get musicality and sampling to balance. So I thought it was a great video idea, so I'm going to share that with you today. But before we jump into those details, what I need from you is that SLC, hit subscribe, like, comment, and more importantly, hit the notifications bell to stay in touch with the new videos that we have up and coming. So point number one, I can't stress this anymore. I come from a hip-hop background, and I wasn't really in tune or aware of this, but it's to be in key with everything that you do, from the keyboard to the drums to the sample. And my main tip here is, if you have a sample going on that's acting as the main melody or the hook or the main bass line of the track, make sure that everything is tuned in key against that sample. Weird pitch things happen depending on how you sampled the loop. If it's come off a turntable, the resolutions could warp the pitch a bit, so you might have to just change the semitones in your instruments or other instruments you're adding from your DAW or even live to make sure things match in key. But I can't stress how important that is, simply because one is, when things are in key, they actually sound louder. And the second piece of that is, it just sounds better in terms of tonality and people wanting to enjoy the song. If you ever think about when you hear somebody that can't sing, you usually say they can't sing is because they're way out of key, their pitch is so far off or not even remotely close that it just turns you off completely. And it fascinates me that, there's only 12 notes on a keyboard in 8 different octaves, and we sort of already know this. Growing up and being around music, we already know what these structures are like intuitively. So when you hear something that's out of key, it immediately turns most people off. So make sure your stuff's in key based on the main sample of your track. Point number two, it's kind of similar to point number one, but I'm not talking about the key here. I'm more talking about the phrasing. It's, just to make sure you stay in step with the phrasing of the main sample. You can jump outside of it a little bit, like if you have a certain rhythmic tone going on and, you want to play some keys that take you slightly out of the key but bring you back, that's okay. But don't go way too far off on the deep end where it's very hard to understand the total groove of the song. So it's just important to anchor yourself around that main sample, sort of driving everything else. Point number three is groove over perfection. And what I mean by this is, depending on what you're sampling and how it falls into the swing and tempo of your DAW, you'll be tempted at times, because of the way today's music is created, to sort of grid everything or time stretch that snare in the sample right on the 4 or the second beat, so to speak. And sometimes it just makes sense that you just let it go. If it falls slightly before or after the second or fourth beat or whatever it's doing on the grid, based on the groove and depending on what else is going on, it might make sense to just leave it that way. Don't overthink it and go for perfection, because sometimes perfection just takes away from the groove and the overall musicality. And when it comes to just grooving or jamming with things, and you got this nice Fender Rhodes lick or bass line going on, and the drummer behind it might not be playing so perfect, but it's not so noticeable that it throws everything off, why would you want to mess with that natural vibe that's going on. So it's important to just make those types of calls and not necessarily aim for perfection, but rather focus on the overall musicality of the track. And there you have it. Those are my thoughts on musicality versus sampling. Let me know your thoughts on this one. I usually join a conversation within 24 to 48 hours of posting these videos, so I'd be highly interested to hear your thoughts on it. You know, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. We usually have ongoing conversations on our Discord channel. I have a Patreon channel as well where we deliver more exclusive and free content and weekly production streams that you might be interested. So check us out. Description is available in terms of links below. Much love and respect to you. Peace.